Picture this for a second. Imagine the intense psychological toll of being trapped inside a completely ordinary, everyday environment, completely isolated from the outside world for an undefined amount of time. You've got no real bed, absolutely no natural sunlight, and you're just surrounded by dozens of total strangers. So what actually happens when you lock 33 people in a grocery store for life-changing money? I mean, it sounds like a totally fun, harmless game show setup, right? But the reality? It is deeply fascinating and honestly, at times, incredibly dark.
Because what starts out as this super exciting grab for free food rapidly morphs into a stark, gritty study of human nature. It doesn't take long at all before civilized, everyday shoppers just completely abandon societal norms and resort to chaotic primal behavior. As one contestant so perfectly summed up the eventual reality of the environment, it was pure anarchy on the sales floor. We're talking pool floaty beds getting stabbed, essential everyday resources being held hostage, and just relentless psychological manipulation.
Welcome to The Explainer. I am seriously so excited to dive into this topic with you today. We're going to analyze this viral endurance challenge, which, again, literally took place inside a fully stocked grocery store. And we're treating it as a fascinating sociological and psychological case study. We are going to explore exactly how alliances and social hierarchies formed, how specific leadership roles emerged under such extreme pressure, and how this seemingly simple contest beautifully mirrors established psychological theories of real-world group conflict. It's going to be a wild ride.
Okay, to make sense of all this chaos, we're going to break the timeline down into 5 distinct phases today. Number 1, the survival ecosystem. Number 2, forming tribes and alliances. Number 3, resource scarcity and control. Number 4, psychological warfare and sabotage. And finally, number 5, anarchy and group conflict.
Let's kick things off with Section 1, the survival ecosystem. You see, the initial setup of this highly constrained environment fundamentally set the stage for extreme competitive behavior right from day one.
The whole entire ecosystem was driven by one massive, overarching motivator, a $250,000 grand prize. This wasn't just some casual weekend competition. These were massive stakes that forced several of the contestants to make drastic, life-altering choices. I mean, some literally had to call their managers to say they weren't coming into work, essentially abandoning their jobs and risking their livelihoods on the spot. This created this incredibly high-pressure, isolated ecosystem, where failure meant returning to the real world potentially unemployed and totally empty-handed.
Initially, sure, the store seemed like a total paradise of abundance. Free food everywhere! But that quickly shifted to a stark reality of perceived scarcity. First off, there were 0 phone chargers available. None, meaning their main connection to the outside world died almost immediately. Participants were subjected to freezing cold nights, literally sleeping on metal shelves and chairs, all under the harsh glare of constant fluorescent lighting. Plus, there was a literal ticking clock. The fresh food had a 30-day spoilage countdown. So the complete lack of basic comforts like heat, quality sleep, and outside contact, it essentially turned a modern supermarket into a harsh, unforgiving wilderness.
Which brings us to Section 2, forming tribes and alliances. Finding protection became absolutely paramount, as contestants reacted to this harsh new reality by immediately clustering into groups for mutual benefit.
Almost immediately, we see the emergence of very distinct tribes, and each one had its own unique culture and strategy. Take Fort Freezy, for example. They heavily fortified the meat aisle, literally building a high-tech security system out of physical barriers that would actually wake them up if any intruders approached. Then, in stark contrast, you had the innovators. They took over the produce aisle with a highly community-focused approach. They famously banded together to support a group member who was 11 weeks pregnant. And then you had yet another group that just straight up took over the manager's office, creating a fully fortified private room.
Now this behavior, it perfectly demonstrates the concept of social stratification. Inside the store, individuals naturally categorize themselves based on shared geography and the resources they manage to claim. This beautifully mirrors real-world survival dynamics. Just like how isolated communities in the real world band together to build infrastructure, these grocery store factions pooled their limited resources to create functional hot showers and just generally increase their collective odds of survival. It is a perfect, contained microcosm of how real-world societies organize themselves from scratch.
Let's move on to Section 3, resource scarcity and control. As the game progresses, the control and the power begin to shift. We enter this intense period where crucial, limited items became the ultimate currency.
As the days blurred into weeks, established psychological models of group conflict just started playing out in real time. Look at the timeline. On day 1, everyone's having a blast, happily building forts and gathering food.
By day 5, resource scarcity starts driving competitive paranoia. It gets to the point where one contestant sneaks into a rival camp and physically stabs a competitor's pool floaty bed. And by week 3, the tactics escalate from just gathering necessities to deliberately stealing and hoarding the few cooking burners in the store just to deny hot meals to their rivals. The entire focus shifted from simple self-preservation to active, intentional sabotage.
Honestly, the most calculated example of this was the Great Burner Heist. And this highlights exactly how leadership roles naturally crystallize under immense pressure. Those with strategic vision step up and organize the masses. The leaders of Fort Freezy and the manager's office team orchestrated this brilliant multi-step tactical maneuver. Step 1. They called a totally fake top 10 ceremony in the walk-in freezer. Step 2. This genius move effectively cleared the entire sales floor of all competitors. Step 3. They had a trusted group member, Colin, sneak out under the totally fake guise of taking a shower so he could systematically locate and steal the few portable cooking burners left in the store. But the resource denial didn't just stop at stealing. In a particularly intense confrontation, one contestant, Gunnar, is denied access to the last remaining burner by a lone wolf competitor named Juan. So in retaliation, Gunnar actively shatters and destroys all of Juan's cooking pots and pans. Now you might be asking yourself, why on earth would you destroy the very tools needed to cook food when you're in a survival situation?
Well, the answer is simple. Because they had entered a zero-sum game. The crucial takeaway here is that in a heavily constrained environment where only one single person can walk away with the prize, destroying an opponent's ability to eat hot food isn't just a blind act of anger. Actually, it is a cold, calculated, defensive survival strategy. Think about it. If one can't eat hot meals, his morale drops significantly. That increases the chances he quits, which directly and mathematically increases Gunnar's own chance of winning the money.
And that brings us to Section 4, Psychological Warfare and Sabotage. Because physical resources weren't the only targets anymore, we now see the introduction of pure, unadulterated sabotage tactics.
Enter a contestant named Xavian. While most of the others relied really heavily on their alliances for protection and sanity, Xavian realized that rogue actors could use manipulation and outgroup antagonism to survive. He openly admitted his goal was to create organized chaos. He even stated on camera with this incredible theatrical flair, "I just want to be the star of the show." He actively weaponized paranoia to establish psychological dominance over the larger groups. And his list of calculated disruptions, it's basically a masterclass in psychological warfare. He's the one who stabbed the pool floaties, completely disrupting a rival's sleep. Then, he threw away the store's only basketball, which was literally the sole source of entertainment and stress relief for the alliances. He originally planned to frame an innocent contestant, Robbie, by hiding the ball in his trash. But in this wild twist of dramatic irony, another contestant, Autumn, actually saw him do it and told the group. But instead of believing her, Xavian manipulated the alliances so effectively that the entire group turned on Autumn. They ruthlessly ostracized her for telling the truth and eventually pushed her to quit. It was mind-blowing to watch.
All of this constant paranoia brings us to Section 5, Anarchy and Group Conflict. Because eventually, the environment hit a total breaking point, resembling a complete modern-day Lord of the Flies scenario.
The alliances realized that simply surviving wasn't going to cut it anymore. They actively had to break the will of the others. So the major alliance initiated these incredibly organized noise campaigns. They were banging pots and pans at 4 a.m. to purposefully cause sleep deprivation. But the lone wolf strategy proved surprisingly resilient. That contestant we mentioned earlier, Juan, he somehow managed to sleep entirely through the nighttime chaos. He would then wake up super early and launch his own counterattacks, loudly singing and thumping on the walls with just incredible energy, while the exhausted alliance members desperately tried to catch up on sleep during the day.
And this brilliantly illustrates the real-world pressure points that dictate group endurance. It's a total battle of attrition. The 4 a.m. noise campaigns directly resulted in severe sleep deprivation, which completely erodes emotional regulation. Then, you had the sponsor offering immediate $5,000 cash bribes to anyone who quit on the spot. Several people took it. It perfectly demonstrates the psychological pull of an immediate reward versus a delayed, uncertain payoff. But honestly, perhaps the heaviest impact came from the outside world. Contestants' families would visit and just stare at them through the front glass. This massively amplified their feelings of guilt and isolation, constantly reminding them of the children and the lives they were neglecting for the sake of the prize money.
Ultimately, all of this compounding pressure results in the total, utter breakdown of the social contract. Those early days of sharing resources and respecting personal space, they entirely vanish. As one contestant bluntly states to another during the destruction of the cooking equipment, "I don't respect you at all." That's the difference. When resources dwindle and the end is nowhere in sight, basic human courtesy is literally the very first thing tossed out the window.
Which leaves us with a truly compelling final thought to wrap up this explainer. Just look at how incredibly fast societal norms dissolve under extreme scarcity. Good, normal people who entered that store just looking to win a game found themselves engaging in theft, lying, and full-blown psychological warfare. So I have to ask, what would 20 days of isolation, active sabotage, and absolutely no sleep do to your moral compass? It's a deeply fascinating question, and one that makes analyzing human behavior in our own everyday lives incredibly eye-opening. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep observing the world around you, and I'll see you next time.